of you. Appreciate y'all being here. I'd like to call the governing board meeting of August 11th to order, and I have about 6:02 on my watch here. Y'all being here. Ada, can you take roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Nielsen,
Here.
Mr. Rader,
Here.
Dr. Ramos,
Present.
Mrs. Reyes,
Here.
Mrs. Dachenet.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We'd like to take a minute now and do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you have a flag close, you can follow that and go from there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'd like to now take a moment of silence, if we could. If there's somebody special in your life that we need to pay attention to, you can do that. I'd like to at least give a lot of consideration to all of those good teachers that are taking care of our kids. If you just take a few minutes. All right, thank you. Many members of the board, do you have a statement you'd like to share with any of us tonight?
Carlotta has one.
Carlotta, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say welcome back to a very interesting online distance learning environment. I have received some feedback from parents, and I think some of us, if not all of us, have received some feedback from teachers since school started. And I'm very interested in hearing and learning more about the experiences that our community is having. I also feel compelled to take a moment to speak about what I perceive to be the collective trauma that's been happening in our world and nation, and certainly around the state, not just with the pandemic, but we've had a number of sudden deaths that have taken place within our community. In addition to that, there's the overall economic turmoil and a significant racial tension, all of which I think are at the forefront of our attention. And because we have so many competing priorities for our focus and attention, the health and safety of our Littleton community is at the forefront. Actually, it's at the front of the line. It's my understanding that the Department of Health released some health benchmarks for resuming in-person instruction. And I think one of the most important decisions that we'll be making relates to ensuring that our community is safe. So I'm very grateful to each one of us who's present and for those who are not, and look forward to discussing what we believe to be in the collective best interest of our community. Thank you, Curtis.
Appreciate that. Any of the others?
Yeah, Mr. President, this is John. If I could have a moment.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just kind of building on Dr. Ramos's comments. I just wanted to really thank all of our teachers, staff, and administrators for your exceptional work and dedication to get this year started for our students and families. Our teachers and staff were confronted with learning and launching a new digital learning modality, communicating regarding this new method, and educating both our students and parents on how to navigate this new system. To Dr. Ramos's point, to all this while adapting during this difficult time as you personally are confronted with challenges and tragedies. So once again, your hard work is evident in all you do for our district. Thank you for your service, commitment to our students, and dedication to serving our community. I also would just like to say that I commend our efforts to expand communication and engagement with our families. In particular, I would like, or I loved all of the first day of school posts on social media. So thank you again to all of our teachers and staff, and that's all I have.
Thank you, John. Amy, Kathy?
Yeah, I have, if I may.
Please.
I also want to mimic the thank you to the teachers. I had the opportunity as a grandma to sit with my grandchildren in second and third grade and had the experience of sitting with them and watching them go through their assignments. And I will tell you my appreciation for what the teachers administrators, all the people behind the scenes had to go through. Anything that I may say is certainly not criticism. It is, if nothing, I have so much respect for these teachers of what they put into this. So thank you. It's not easy. I can definitely see that. I could see the frustration in the teachers' faces. Not that they were trying to show it. It was just a lot going on. So they held together well, even under tremendous pressure with parents constantly interrupting and not understanding. So please, Dr. Freeman, reach out, let them know that none of what we're discussing is criticism. If anything, it's admiration for how they are able to handle together. And we're really just looking for ways to make their life easier, whatever that means in this crazy time. So please give my appreciation to all. That's it.
Thank you, Kathy. Amy, you want to word it out?
I agree wholeheartedly. I fully am experiencing myself as a mom, how distance learning work, and then as a teacher doing it. And I couldn't say enough amazing things about the teachers we have in Littleton. They're working hard and we're all learning together. And I am appreciative for all of them and all that they do.
Thank you so very much. I think the only thing that I could add to that, I appreciate the principals, the videos that they put together. I watched all of those. It was unique and interesting to watch them as they invited all of their kids to come back to school. And I had a few minutes the other day coming back from a doctor's appointment or whatever, and I said, swing by a couple of schools, and that was a time that they were serving grab and go. And I'm appreciative of those people who were out there under the white tent in the middle of the heat, waiting for those parents and kids to come by. Just appreciate those again and all the staff. And I think just the last thing on here, I was impressed with the speaker, John Lynn, that we had when Professional Development Day on the 27th of July. It was a great introduction to school and a great introduction to behaviors. And I think that's one of the things we need to look at as well. So thank you all, and I appreciate your comments. Dr. Freeman, would you like to?
Thank you, Mr. President. We have two things in the superintendent's report. I have some summary comments, and then I think maybe President Nielsen's going to read the attendance awareness proclamation. So let me start out with saying good evening to everyone. Buenas tardes a todos, and start as members have referred, reporting the deep sadness of recent tragic events in the Littleton community. 3 of our students at Trace Rios lost their father to gun violence. One of our new fine arts families lost their daughter to hit and run accident not far from here. And one family lost 2 children from Country Place in a car accident that took place in about the same area as where our bus accident was last year. Our hearts go out to their relatives and their friends during this difficult time. And to add to that, we feel fortunate that while we've had some staff who've contracted COVID-19, none have succumbed to the virus so far. We do want to extend our condolences to the many families in our community that have been impacted by this virus, our staff that have lost both siblings and parents. It's especially heart-wrenching because of the imposed distance at the time of these losses. I would add, our principals and our social workers have been connecting with these families to offer support and resources, and those efforts have been amazing. They're a great team. The start of the school year was like no other in the history of the district. The number of cases of COVID-19 in our community still have people appropriately concerned about the opening of school, as well as the steps the district will be taking to ensure the health and safety of our students and staff. Our reopening plan includes informing the community on moving safely forward with the governor's executive orders, guidance from the Arizona Department of Education, information from the U.S. Center for Disease Control, the Arizona Department of Health Services, the newly released benchmarks, assistance from Maricopa County Public Health Department, and all of the input from staff, students, families, and other stakeholders in our community. While the health and safety of our staff and students remains our top priority, we continue to be strongly committed to student learning, to effective communication, and preparing for a time when we can all finally return to holding instruction in classrooms. Throughout the summer and in the days leading up to the first day of school, we've used emails, phone calls, text messages, social media posts to gather information and questions from our families and staff. A whole new section of our website is devoted to COVID information, including an FAQ page so our community could see constantly updated information. We made a connection with our partners from Read Better, Be Better, and they provided a group of volunteers who worked as the year started to gather email addresses from our families that we didn't have in our student information system. Those volunteers made over 900 calls and netted us over 300 new email addresses, which are greatly appreciated. And as usual, the help of community partners makes a big difference in what we're able to do for our kids. It also helps our constant contact and remind information broadcasts because we use those methods a lot to reach out, and that way we're reaching more people each time. At the end of July, our families were invited to drive up to schools and pick up materials and laptops for students. The curbside pickup was arranged by grade levels to allow for some social distancing, limited number of people on campus at each time. Families with 1 or 2 students received 1 laptop, and those with 3 or more students received 2 devices because we weren't quite sure how many people were going to show up. During those first 2 days alone, we averaged over 1,500 laptops a day distributed. Families were also informed our goal is to provide a laptop for each child as soon as new orders received. It seems that orders that came from China were turned away at our ports of entry in California. So we've arranged for the next round to be going out to homes soon by trying to purchase through another vendor. One of our most important steps this year is to connect, engage our families, because distance learning isn't happening in person at schools. And that means the responsibility for achievement is shared now more than ever between the school and our families and our students. We started our commitment to providing support to families with the dynamic digital learning family engagement days, and those were used to introduce dynamic digital distance models and their components. All 7 schools reached out by phone and remind to ensure families felt supported with logging into the Google Classroom, Google Meets, Clever, and Chromebooks. Teachers contacted parents to set up meetings to log in with their child and show them how to navigate online resources that the students are using. Parents who missed out on this are at a bit of a disadvantage to start the year, so we'll be repeating some digital training opportunities just for parents in the weeks to come. Teachers used fun and engaging Google Slides to share with families their daily routines, and they had opportunities to ask questions and inquire about the type of lessons students would be participating in and the assignments they might be asked to complete. During this time, teachers and staff also help provide resources for Remind and Parent View applications, Wi-Fi access, and login information, as well as answers about dynamic digital learning. Our follow-up engagement days were the first, following the engagement days were the first ever virtual Meet the Teacher night with families. Teachers took that opportunity to make it fun and interactive for their new and returning students. Their creativity included Bitmojis in their classrooms, and students were excited to embark on new classroom setting and even shared their own Bitmojis with some of our staff. Teachers also used their laptops to show their on-site classrooms and give the students a familiar place to look forward to when we can come back to school. They shared snippets of their online learning videos, other short videos, lots of information about the upcoming school year, even online scavenger hunts. Occasionally administrators would join the session and kind of steal the show, inadvertently, of course. And while the format of this year's event was much different from years past, people still were pretty excited about the new school year. And so that's one thing that's the same. We developed some strategies to continually gather feedback so we can assess how everyone's doing and make some adjustments to the new dynamic digital learning plan and ensure that we meet the needs of all of our students without exception. Comments connected from families this week will be shared in a later board report. And they allude to things that have been mentioned by members so far. Some people are frustrated. But some people are satisfied. Some are making comparisons to the Littleton School District and other districts. So I have a couple here that are highlights from two of our moms. One mom says, the kinder team has made things so easy. It's helped with my stress levels tremendously. I even suggested to my daughter's third grade teacher to use the way you've set your schedule and how you've worded things. I'm sure the third grade teacher appreciated advice from the kindergarten team. And another mom told her teacher that she loves the school and she's so glad she switched from the charter school. She said she's had more communication from our school during this brief time that she's been enrolled than the whole year at her previous school. She's a single mom and says that she feels super important because how we've communicated with her. Our summer feeding program ended July 17th with a total of 27,452 free meals provided to the community. That's breakfasts and lunches. That was a 29% increase in meals over last summer. We've now moved to our regular school meal program that President Nielsen referenced. And we have many options for families to receive meal services. As always, breakfast is still free for Littleton students. Monday through Friday at all the schools, sites, we have safety protocols in place for families who prefer curbside pickup. Meal bundles are available Mondays and Wednesdays at Country Place and Estrella Vista from 4 to 6. Those are microwavable, so they can be heated up and eaten at a later time. For enrollment news to start the year, current conditions have certainly impacted our numbers, and as is the trend across the country. As of this week, our enrollment's still climbing, but we're down about 12% from where we were last spring. We typically start out down and gain enrollment for about a month before leveling out. And so that is typical, but this year has some unique challenges. So we'll continue to monitor that. We're doing follow-up with families that were enrolled last spring to ensure that students who may be returning don't miss out on important instructional time. We also want to express our appreciation to our partners at the Boys and Girls Club who've expanded their capacity and extended hours to help provide a place for children to be safely supervised while we all wait for the virus spread conditions to reach the new health department benchmarks to safely offer in-person instruction. And I'll be reviewing those with the board and the community in an item later in the agenda. In addition, I want to remind everybody two things. First, be sure to be counted in the census. In the last decade, we were underfunded because we were undercounted. And we'd really appreciate if we don't let that happen again. And second, although not less important, is to be sure you're registered to vote. The election will be here before you know it, and your voice does matter. In the immortal words of Congressman John Lewis, never despair and never give up. And that's all I have, Mr. President, this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. I appreciate that. If you can pull up that awareness statement, I will read that one. Okay, hang on just a second. Proclamation of September as Attendance Awareness Month. Whereas good attendance is essential to student achievement and graduation, and we are committed to dedicating our resources and attention to reducing chronic absenteeism rates with the focus starting as early as kindergarten. Whereas improving attendance and reducing chronic absence takes commitment, collaboration, and tailored approaches to particular challenges and strengths in each community. Whereas schools and community partners can reach out more frequently to absent students to determine why they are missing school and what would help them attend more regularly. Whereas chronic absence can be significantly reduced when schools, parents, communities work together to monitor and promote good attendance and address hurdles that keep children from participating in learning activities. And whereas this year, more than ever, there's a great need to have students connected and engaged and to build traditional classroom relationships, building strategies even while participating in an online setting. Now, therefore, be it resolved that as the governing board of Littleton Elementary School District, I proclaim that our schools will stand with the nation in recognizing September as Attendance Awareness Month. We hereby commit to focusing on reducing chronic absence to give all children an equitable opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive academically, emotionally, and socially, whether it be in person or in distant learning settings. Thank you. Next item, Ms. Vanderwater, have you got something for us this evening?
President Nielsen, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman, I'm excited to present to you our program showcase for this evening. Tonight, we have put together for our governing board and community's enjoyment a slideshow of visual artwork created by our student population across our 7 schools from the 2019-2020 school year. Since we had to cancel our district art show at the end of last year due to the school closures, we thought this would be a great time to share creative works of art by the student population in the Littleton School District. Involvement in the arts is associated with gains in math, reading, cognitive ability, critical thinking, and verbal skills. Arts learning can also improve motivation, concentration, confidence, and teamwork. A 2005 report by the RAND Corporation about the visual arts argues that the intrinsic pleasures and stimulation of the art experience do more than sweeten an individual's life. According to the report, they can connect people more deeply to the world and open them to new ways of seeing, creating the foundation to forge social bonds and community cohesion. As you'll see in the video slideshow, the Littleton School District maintains a strong arts program in all 7 of our schools, kindergarten through 8th grade. And we have exceptional art teachers who assist students in expressing themselves through visual arts media. I would first like to recognize our 7 visual arts teachers. Natalia Stefano from Collier, Emily Walters from Country Place, Julia Willihan from Estrella Vista, Michelle Walla from Fine Arts, Kennedy Gunnis from Littleton, Kayla Gillingham from Quinton, and Judith Smith, from Tres Rios. Please enjoy the slideshow. I believe our board internally on Zoom is not seeing the slideshow. It's just through the YouTube channel, if I'm correct in saying that.
That appears to be correct.
Okay. We will make sure that that gets to our governing board. what our community is viewing is about a 2-minute and 50-second slideshow of kindergarten through 8th grade artwork. It's about 45 to 50 pieces of art. And I was just notified that the slideshow has completed. So we want to congratulate all of our students and staff for that incredible display of creativity. We look forward to seeing what they're creating, even in a dynamic distance model this year with their art teachers. And again, we'll make sure that our governing board gets access to view that slideshow. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
President.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and move on. I think we're still trying to pull this up, so hang on one more minute, please.
Mr. President, while we're waiting, may I make a comment?
Please, go ahead, John.
I just want to thank all of our artists for their hard work. I know attending the art show and then the opportunity to then recognize those artists at our normal board meetings is one of my favorite things. So I'm so sorry that we were unable to do that, but I'm also so happy that we were still able to recognize them. And I really do look forward to seeing the video.
Thank you. Somebody try to get it up here, but let's go ahead and move on. Or do you want to wait a couple more minutes?
I'm just looking to see. There's 2 videos.
Dr. Freeman, the other videos are for item 11.
Okay. All right. I hope those work.
All right, well, let's go ahead then. We'll open this for a call to the public. Ada, have you received any emails or anything in relation to? The record says she said that no emails have been received or any comments received. Item number 9 is the consent agenda. Do any members of the board wish to remove any items from that consent agenda?
No. No.
If not, may I have a motion to accept the consent?
This is Amy, and I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Amy.
This is Kathy. I'll second it.
Kathy, thank you very much. Ada, would you roll call, please?
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos, Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sashnet.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Item number 10, Dr. Freeman, is a draft site sketch and discussion of the Alomar site plan school.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight we have representatives. Thank you. Tonight we have representatives from the ADM group, the architecture firm the district's been using for their prototypes for a while now, who would like to introduce the site plan and some of the things they've been working on. We gave them the option of, having us do this and send them our feedback, or having them actually be on the Zoom with us so they could hear the discussion of the board themselves. And they thought that would be better. So what we're going to try to do is turn over the screen to them on their computer so they can present their screen and lead the discussion and use the pointer and those kind of things to tell you how far along the site plan has come. This year is a planning year for the development of that site and entering into some procurement, some pre-construction. Next year would be a construction year. So there is a lot of stuff that needs to happen up front to be sure we're prepared for construction and have a good design that's efficient and works within our budget. And feedback from the board tonight is just one of those steps in helping us move forward. So I'm not seeing anybody else's screen come up on my Zoom.
Dr. Freeman, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mr. Barcone. Do we need to release the screen for him to take it, or does he just need to say?
Yes.
I could grab it.
You should be able to take it over from there.
All right, here it goes. There you go.
There you
Can
go.
see it?
Yes. We can see your view. There you go. Now we can see your presentation mode on your computer, but we're not looking yet at just the PowerPoint for presentation mode for the audience. There you go.
President Nielsen, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman. When Dr. Freeman reached out and asked if we were willing to make this little presentation today, we said absolutely. It's been a long, long time since we've had an opportunity to be in front of you. And frankly, we've missed you. I'm glad to see that everybody seems to be healthy and staying safe. As we are at ADM Group. Today I'm sitting in our conference room at ADM Group and practicing social distancing. With me in the room, who you can't see, is Nina Sheriff, our principal and director of design, and also Glenn Patterson, our BIM manager. Just to give you an idea of how we go about doing what you're going to see today, when Dr. Freeman is approached by different developers out there to build a new school in their development, we get together and we look at the site plan. And so we have a short period of time to do our due diligence, which means where is the site? What's the access to the site? Can we lay a typical Littleton Elementary School District plan on the site? Does it flow well? There's a lot of different things that go into laying out the site. So today we're going to look at Elmar. Next slide. So for those of you that aren't necessarily aware of where Elmar is, it is on Broadway Road, just east of El Mirage. Next slide. So typically, Littleton develops school sites that are somewhere between 14 and maybe 17 acres. In this case, you have a site that's almost 19 acres plus. If you'll notice on the far edge of the site plan, you'll see a gray parking lot. Is our cursor going that way? I don't think our cursor is going that way, but you see a parking lot over there. That is also an adjacent park. So not only do you have the 19-acre site, you also have an adjacent park with their own parking lot. So the developers at Elmar said, how can we develop the school which would allow the community access to a soccer field on your property, to baseball fields, softball fields, and in some cases, maybe some use of your gymnasium. So we worked with them to come up with a plan that put those facilities as close to the park as we could. We also have our own criteria. If you'll notice in the center of the site, you see the little yellow buses. That is our bus drop-off. So the buses come in off El Mirage, they make the loop, they drop the kids off adjacent to the gymnasium for breakfast in the morning or activities, whatever they might need to do. Plus we have some additional parking in the center of that for staff. In front, what's become a big issue, not only with the parents, the developers, the city, is parent drop-off queuing. what they want to do is they want to get those cars and those parents off the public highway as quickly as they can onto school property, have them loop around and then safely drop their kids off in front of the school and then exit out another driveway. So in this case, you'll see on the far left, that's where the parents come in. They make this huge loop all the way around the campus to the front of the building where they can drop their kids off. They can even extend as far as a classroom building. And then they make the loop and then exit back out the same street. So a lot of the development, offsite development has already been done out there at Elmar. And we worked with the developers to identify where these driveways were so that once they put in the roads and the driveways, they're in the correct place. We don't have to go back and tear out new construction, cut asphalt, and do all those things. So it's important for us to get it right the first time. Now, having said that, the site plan that you're looking at is Country Place kind of broken up. We broke it up into different buildings for a couple of different reasons. Number one is Dr. Freeman hates to air conditioning corridors and maintain the floors and everything else that's going on there. So number one, we minimize the interior space that you have to maintain and operate. Secondly, it allows us to maybe phase the construction in like we did at your last school where we built the two-story classroom after the rest of the campus had been built, which allows you time for the growth to take place in that particular development. So if we move on to the floor plans, again, similar to Country Place, you'll see on the left is the admin area up front in pink. The purple is the media center. The green on the center is our special ed K through 4th grade. The brown is the kinder playground. So it's out in front by the parent drop off. It's also adjacent to the nurse's office. So if you look over at the pink administration office, you'll see there's a door that anybody from kinder has direct access to the nurse if they need it. Next slide. The next slide then is our upper grades. We've got 5th through 8th grade here. Again, we've got 4 classrooms per grade. We've got our computer labs, our science lab, our restrooms, and some of the common facilities used by the older grades. Our gymnasium, again, is got a stage on one end of it. The kitchen is the yellow and the serving line. We have restrooms in the gymnasium building, and then the brown out there on the outside is our service yard. Now, again, I want you to remember these are all concepts. This is subject to change based on a lot of meetings that we still need to have with district personnel, the community, Dr. Freeman and his staff. So these are the parts and pieces that we think worked for you in the past with a little modification and maybe a different facade. We can give it its own identity so that it looks different from all the other schools in the district. So we still have some work to do once we pull the trigger to develop this project. Now, Littleton usually develops somewhere around 90 to 94,000 square feet. And so this follows that same concept. It's a good size elementary school, and you've got plenty of land to move around. So with that said, we'd open it up to any questions or comments anybody might have.
Can you go back to the site plan so that's on the screen while they're giving feedback?
There you go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Any comments from any of you?
This is Kathy. I just have a question. So go back to the park access and the parking lot, being able to potentially use the soccer fields and all that, and potentially, depending on how it lays out, the gym. So we had discussion about this in a different school and the security concerns of having campus potentially open, whatever that looks like. Can you talk a little bit more about if there is security concerns on that?
So yes, we'll have a number of different perimeter fences around the campus. One of them, of course, would be around the play fields, which would separate the buildings, the fire lane, and our parking lot from the green grass areas. We would also have perimeter fencing around the outside of the project and down through between our property and the park itself. So we would have a gate only between the park and our property, which could be locked when necessary or opened as the park communicates with the principal and the occupants of your site.
Okay, and then the second thing is the loop. So you're right, that is a huge concern in almost every school. Parents dropping off as I don't know if more and more parents are dropping off, but when I loop around this, it is quite lengthy, this
Yes.
loop, and I'm making kind of I'm turning kind of like a U-turn, right? I'm just kind of going back around to loop all the way out.
Yes.
So where are the children standing? Because what happens now at certain schools, they come up, they come around, and the kids are right on the sidewalk. Like I can't visually see it, but so when I loop and I start to come back out, are kids right there on that section where actually sometimes you're so worried they're going to push one of them off, they'll get ran over. Is that close?
So yes, what's not there is that sidewalk in front of the building is 10 to 12 feet wide. So they're not in a typical residential 4 or 5 foot wide sidewalk where they have danger of falling into traffic. They can be picked up or dropped off depending on the administration of the school from the left building all the way to the gymnasium building on the other side. If necessary, what we've done in the past is we've had fencing along, low fencing along the sidewalk, which would separate the cars from the children, and then have openings periodically where kids could get off the vehicle, walk safely on the sidewalk, and then through the opening and not have it totally wide open. Also, if you're a parent and you're dropping your kid off somewhere between the yellow buildings, there's enough room to get out of line safely and then proceed to get back out of the site.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. John? You got any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I guess I would just share Kathy's concerns a little bit regarding the egress ingress point and the queuing. I don't know. So it seems like that one lane that's going to be backed all the way around for one entrance and one exit. What I think people tend to do is they're either going to try to cut through the parking area there, and then you're going to have kids being dropped off there, or they're going to stop on El Mirage Road and be dropping off their kids. So it doesn't. I certainly understand the point of trying to get folks off of the main thoroughfare and having as large a queuing area as possible. But the one entrance and one exit point seems like a very unique feature, and I'm just curious as to how that would work. Second point is I don't know if we've talked, or I do know we've talked about this being potentially a Cambridge school model or other focus school model, and I don't know if that's been discussed or considered as we think about whether there needs to be any adaptations to the school based on the specific focus that we choose, or if there's any special features that can kind of be incorporated into the school to complement the focus that is chosen for this location. And then I guess to the third point or third comment I'd make is uh, I think what I see with a lot of the new schools going up is almost a marketing effort, if you will, with the facade and how they look. And I don't know, I think I would be interested in and trying to create a facade that really drew parents in to the school, even if it was a little bit different than what we normally consider. Some of the schools, they put a big fancy facade on there, and I think it actually works, right? It convinces parents that somehow, just because the facade is fancy or looks prestigious, that the school itself is prestigious. I know, regardless of our facade, our schools are already prestigious. But if it makes parents feel that way, I'm all for maybe looking at it from maybe a marketing angle as to within certain cost parameters, of course, we could examine that. So those were the only comments I had. I don't know if there's specific responses, but
Well,
thank you for the time.
if I could jump in there real quick, I'll let Roger talk about the Cambridge portion of it, but Roger has been pounding on us the same theory. You notice the buildings are slightly curved to match the curve of Almirage Road. He wants us to kind of mimic that circular thing that's going on there, and to give you a facade that has a real nice appearance, because again, you're competing with charter schools. Their schools, unfortunately, probably won't last 40 years, much less 25 years, because their frame and stucco years are durable. They'll be there 50, 60, 70 years from now. But, they spend a lot of money on the facade. And so we've been challenged by Dr. Freeman to make sure that the facade is something that looks a little bit different and that, is user friendly and inviting. As far as the access to the site, if you'll notice where the bus drop off is, in light lines you can see directly across the street is a street coming from the subdivision. So when we sit down with the developer and the municipality, they almost insist that our driveways line up with streets that open into Almirage Road, so that we don't have something mid-block. Secondly, there's no way that we could get another driveway mid-block, because on the opposite side of the street, it's all going to be masonry walls, fencing, and no access from the community onto Almirage Road. Third, I think when you look at the left driveway, it's going to be an in, but it's also going to be a left and a right turn only. And we've looked at that intersection with the city, with the developer. I think you realize that most cities have a K-12 coordinator that works with us to give us advice on where the crossings should be and where the driveways should be. And so we've worked with all those different entities to try and come up with the best layout that we think works. Roger, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Burkonen. Just to follow up with some comments. We've discussed the pros and cons of the length of that queuing as well. Oops. Just mute. Thank you. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we've talked about, for instance, creating some pass-throughs for vehicles along that way, depending on the amount of traffic, breaking that up somehow. So, we're working on that. I think Mr. Rader's comment about if it looks like it's going to be too time consuming to make that loop, parents will try to come up with their own shortcuts. And so we want to try to find a way to make that work for different people. It is one of the challenges of our schools to be able to accommodate a high amount of traffic in a short period of time at the beginning and the end of the day. And we don't have the luxury of like departing and arriving flights at the airport, though a two-tier drop-off might really help us. So you end up with, instead of stacking, lengthening. And I think what we might try to do is to build some flexibility into that front lot. So, we could open and close things to direct traffic as needed. Say, for instance, for evening events versus daytime queuing and things like that. So we'll continue to work on that. We're aware that it's an issue, but not sure that we have the right solution yet. And so that's helpful. We had been working with Brookfield on what kind of theme might fit with that community. And we've been in talks over a year with them on that. The first section of homes that they're developing ends right about where this property starts. So that area, which is the parking lot to your far east, is how far the road reaches into the development now. And the next phase is going to be that street in front of the school. So the houses, I mean, you can go now onto their website and shop houses if you want to see what they're going to look like. The first set of homes does not look like they're really big lots. I think there's going to be a variety of lots in that master planned community. The facade, when you drive in, has a really high wall. They're putting in a lot of plants and things. And so we're working with the Brookfield and Alomar people to see if there are some facade elements that would be part of the neighborhood that we could carry into the curb appeal of the building. And we're not quite that far along yet, but knowing that's a concern of the board helps us in prioritizing the things that we're going to do. The main demand that something like Cambridge would place on the school is a high degree of Wi-Fi and bandwidth infrastructure, because it's individually paced digital curriculum. And, if I'd have told you that a few years ago, you might say that was real exceptional. But with the efforts that we're putting in this year to have a dynamic digital curriculum everywhere, is we're having to make sure that our networks and backbones are robust enough to carry a lot of streaming and digital traffic. And I think all of us have experienced, even in Zoom meetings like this, where somebody's signal weakens and they start to break up. So that's the main thing, Mr. Rader, that we've talked about in working with ASU Center for the Future of Arizona and the Brookfield people on a possible signature program there. Right now, the conversation with the community is with the developer. They'll sell a number of homes before they turn that over to a community board. And so they will be our key contacts. They'll continue to be our key contacts for quite a while with making sure that the design process and the components of the school are kind of in keeping with what they have in mind for their community. And then again, working with the city. So if, as board members give comments, if there's things they'd like to see, for instance, I said, the queuing is a long ways. Perhaps one of the things we could do would be to build some alternative gates in there so we can control the length of it, depending on traffic or things like that. If you have those kind of ideas, those would be really helpful. I think, like just looking at this, I'd probably move a couple of lines here and there. I know ADM Group is really happy to hear that from the superintendent. And so this really is an important feedback phase for us, because eventually, some of these things are going to turn into poured concrete, and they'll be a lot harder to move after that. So thank you, Mr. Rader, Ms. Reyes, for your comments so far.
I just have one more comment as a follow-up. So I appreciate the facade and making it fit into the neighborhood, but I also want to make sure that we're always concerned with facade in all of our schools, no matter what or where you live. And that's important to me. So I could see where a conversation would. So my point is merely, I think it's appreciative that we concern how the neighborhood looks, but I also think we take that same interest in every facade, no matter what community it may or may not be in. And second of all, my only big concern, because I'm not an architect, is that front drop off. Without question, that is a concern of mine. I have no idea how to design it or develop it, but that is going to be, I would almost lay odds on it, a nightmare. So, and if they think people aren't going to take that short road over there and park out there, it's going to happen. It's going to back up anyway. So then it's going to back up out there, and it's going to back up on that huge long driveway, and kids are going to push each other off, and then it's going to be a mess. So that's my feedback. I don't have any architectural design other than that. Thanks.
Your years of experience as a mom and a grandma.
Well, and Mrs. Reyes, you've helped us build a number of these campuses already, haven't you?
Yep, I think I have. But
Yes,
you've always
yes.
done a good job. I just know drop-offs, not even in our district. I mean, you can go down Lower Buckeye right here. That one right there is a nightmare. They have police helping you stop and start, and that's crazy. And so I'm really more concerned, if you've ever been at our schools in the morning, it's scary. These kids are small. They're playing on that sidewalk. They are relatively small sidewalks. You get a bunch of kids, the gates aren't open, maybe for school to go in. They're pushing and shoving, and it could easily. So I like at least a little fencing, if nothing else, a barrier between that road, if nothing else, where they stand. Because again, you're talking 5, 6-year-olds slapping each other and swinging their backpacks around. Things happen. So figure it out, design it, and yeah, that it looks good otherwise.
Thank you for your comments.
Perlette, Perlette, have you got anything you'd like to add?
I do. So I do second the concerns about the pickup and drop off, but my other question is, and I don't know the cost of this, but it looks like we have a lot of land here. So do we have land here by the softball, basketball field? Could we do another one there so that we might have the ability to have a softball or a baseball, like both happening? I just feel like having all this extra land here is, well, it's great if we needed a soccer field, but we seem like we already have one of those. So I'd be interested if we have plans for that, maybe in the future, for all this extra land here.
No, we do. We have enough room to even add another baseball field on there, as you
Okay.
could see.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, I don't know, like, I know it can, PE gym teachers probably, and then sports and stuff, we may want to have 2 games going at one time, or just have the ability for our kids to play,
Sure.
since we have that land. And then I just wanted to say thank you. It looks like we have plenty of parking here, and I know that along with pickup drop off, that's always a frustration for me, is finding a place to park when I just want to go into the building if it's during that pickup or drop off time. So I wanted to thank you for having all this amount of parking available.
Thank you, Amy. I'm sorry, Perlette, did you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that the comments that were made are reflective of any thoughts I might have already. Thank you.
Mr. Marcone, I wear 2 hats, and I don't know if I've seen the school and the park there that the city's going to put in there in a previous one, but this to me is kind of misoriented, at least what I've ever thought, because I understood it to which is the right-hand side of the column? Is that north or is that east?
So north is straight up.
Okay. So to the east, I understand that we're going to have an Alomar Community Center. And to the left and to the west, where that drops off right there, the city of Avondale is going to have a park with about 27 or 30 acres in it, with a water feature and fields and all kinds of other stuff. And I thought there was some sharing that was supposed to be done between the city of Avondale and the parking that may come in where these buses are on another day. We just need to verify that. That somehow just sticks in my brain as one of the earlier pictures that I had seen of this. And the only reason I bring it up is tomorrow night, we're having a meeting with the city to talk about naming the park down there, which to my knowledge was on to the west and to the left side there. So we need to make sure we know which side, whether it's the community center on one side and the city park of Avondale on the other side. It'd be one like Festival Field or Friendship Park that'll be down to accommodate those people that will be down in that south area of Avondale. Go ahead.
So I think I've seen some of the same preliminary sketches that maybe council members have seen. And we're aware that there is a green belt area to what people are looking at this to the left side. And so we've tried to put a big section of green on that boundary. And on the right side where that parking is also going to be a section of neighborhood parking. But the structure I saw going up there looks like an improved, not a gazebo, what would be a bigger name for a gazebo? A ramada. It looks like a covered ramada with some amenities inside that still, and there's more green space even further to the right of that. And El Mirage Road, as it comes up, turns into Broadway and eventually lines up with the Broadway alignment. And that's where you'll see the entrance to the subdivision right now. So I think part of what's happening, President Nielsen, is the school district was working on site plan sketches and the city was working on park sketches. And we're aware that we want to tie those two green pieces together. But I think this will be our first opportunity for our sketches and those sketches to be put side by side. And I'm sure, as you can see, there's room for us to make adjustments. I think, nudging a little space here and there to create room for kids that might congregate without spilling into traffic and some things like that have been comments of board members are all things that we can still do to make adjustments in the site plan. And we'll have revisions of that to bring back at a future time before we go into procurement and getting a contractor and a GMP and all of that. So there's still a lot of steps ahead, but it was important for us to hear your feedback and your discussion before we start making commitments on some of these things. I hope that helps people understand what's going on. Is that north of us is power station. And so east and west of us are community amenities, and we're sitting in the middle of those amenities.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. That did answer my question. I think the other one I asked, where does staff park? Does staff park over there where the buses drop off?
So we have a combination. As you could tell, we've got a lot of parking out in front for visitors. So we'll distribute staff where the buses park, as well as some of the excess parking in between the parent drop-off.
Thank you. And I guess just the last thing I'd like to reiterate is the facade. There's 480 homes going in right now, but the master plan calls for 3,500 homes down in that area. And I know, listening to the developers, they want to make something that's a showcase that people want to say, ooh la la, I'd like to come by there and see what's going on. So again, we just need to make sure whatever it is that it's enticing and give them the opportunity to say, hey, I really want to go to school here.
So President Nielsen, we just called up or got the subdivision on the other computer here. There is going to be a 30-acre regional park just to the west of the school site. Between that park and the school site will be a green belt, as Dr. Freeman said, which will be for the overhead power line that goes through the subdivision and into the substation. And then the little park, I'm not sure how big that is, but it's called a neighborhood park on the right-hand side.
Yeah, I think that we had discussions with that. There's a Ramada. They were going to put a pool in there, but then they didn't know how they would change, so they'd have to put a change room in there. And I don't remember what's happened to that. I mean, that was lost about 6 months ago, but it is a community thingy there. And then, like I say, the 30-acre park or regional park will be equivalent to Friendship Park or Festival Fields or something.
Yes.
So, yep. And again, just with the parking, just the one exit, whatever, if you've got people coming left to turn in there and people right going in there, you're going to have to play dodgeball or something to get in there, or be courteous enough to allow people in there. But I think we can address that in the future.
Absolutely. By the way, we're sending Dr. Freeman that big subdivision site if you want to share it with him, Roger.
Okay, any other comments on this one? Have you got, Mr. Marcone, sufficient information at least to get started with it or continue where you're at?
We're definitely good.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? If there's no other comments, I'd like to move on to item number 11.
We're going to take over. We're going to take over the screen. Okay, good. Thanks.
Okay,
President
Kristen.
Nielsen, members of the governing board, Dr. Freeman. Tonight, the governing board will hear and view information regarding the digital distance learning model and the use of Google Classrooms for delivering instruction and supporting our students and families with learning within the opening of schools model. The Littleton School District opened up the FY 2021 school year under the digital distance learning model, allowing for students kindergarten through 8th grade to receive instruction in the areas of social emotional learning, English language arts, math, science, history, social sciences, and a variety of special area classes. Within the home, during the school hours, students have instruction and/or learning for approximately 7 hours a day, with their teachers instructing virtually during a portion of that time. The platform that they are using for instruction is Google Classroom, and its features like Google Meet to allow for online virtual conferencing. This evening, we have put together 2 videos for the governing board and community to view. The first video covers the digital distance model and the opportunity we have in using this model in our community. You will hear from 4 district leaders, including our superintendent, sharing how the model positively impacts our students, staff, and families as we continue to educate, innovate, support, and grow in all aspects of student learning. We will play the first video and then I'll introduce the second video. Please enjoy.
This year, Littleton's geared up for being able to have a very dynamic distance learning model. Last year, we anticipated having online instruction for some kids who weren't successful in the school building. And that got sidetracked when school closed for the 4th quarter. What we did is we put out some really great material for learning activities, but we had to ramp up the teacher support. And so teachers did Remind and Loom videos and other things like that, but we didn't have a lot of support for families. And this year we've taken that into consideration. We're starting the year with our dynamic digital learning model, but it includes family engagement.
So dynamic distance learning is our solution to providing instruction at home during the pandemic. We'll be using Google Classroom, which is a tool that we have used with our 3rd through 8th graders over the past couple of years.
Our students and our parents can expect instruction in the home to look as close as it can be to what they've experienced in the past. We want our students to feel comfortable in the home setting and learning from home, and our parents supporting our students in that capacity.
So we had a group of teaching and learning advisors and instructional coaches from Littleton during school closure last spring look at the pacing guides and identify those essential standards that we knew students would need to have additional exposure to in this upcoming school year.
It's going to be very important for students to get on a daily routine, similar to what they would have experienced coming to school every day. Waking up at the same time, having breakfast at the same time, maybe deciding on when they're going to do their independent work throughout their day. There might be multiple children in the home, so the family might have to set a schedule for when the children are using the device or using that personal quiet space within the home. It's also going to be important to connect with the classroom teacher at times during the school hours that the teacher is providing that whole group instruction or one-to-one instruction or the virtual office hours, so students can feel as supported as possible.
Littleton Elementary School District and the Curriculum and Assessment Department has taken great care in ensuring that the instruction that we're providing students in the 2021 school year is comprehensive, is just what they need, and will meet their needs and allow them to grow academically, socially, and as a whole child.
Monday through Friday, our students can experience asynchronous and synchronous instruction. And what that means is, at times, students will be interacting with their classroom teacher and their peers for whole group instruction, small group instruction, and interaction and engagement with kids from their classroom. Other times, students may be working independently on assignments that teachers have planned and prepared. Students will be participating in learning at their grade level content and standards for English language arts, math, science, as well as history, social sciences. We know during this time, it's difficult for students, and so we'll also be providing for our students interaction with their class and their classroom teacher, with lessons and activities for social emotional learning supports. So we'll be providing that to students on a regular basis, so we can make sure that they're healthy and safe as they're working at home.
We really want to see happen is when you need help making your child successful, you reach out to us and let us help you. Don't be afraid to ask your teacher for help. Don't be afraid to ask your principal for help, because we know we're raising expectations. They've been raised everywhere. And if we do a good job of this, working with families, our kids will be better prepared for workforce and life than they would have been if we hadn't had this crisis. I mean, that's the whole idea, is to turn a crisis into an opportunity.
Thank you. The second video, we will display a virtual tour of the Google Classroom tool that our teachers and students are utilizing for asynchronous instruction. You'll have an opportunity to see and hear how this tool is used for independent learning while still hearing from and seeing the classroom teacher, accessing assignments, manipulating the learning content, submitting assignments, and accessing support resources to guide their learning. Google Meet is briefly mentioned as the tool we are utilizing for synchronous instruction and virtual office hours. You will have an opportunity to hear and learn more about how our staff is interacting with students using Google Meet at the September Governing Board meeting. We will be providing a video walkthrough of the Google Meet process during that September time. Please enjoy this video of a Google Classroom tour.
Welcome to Littleton's dynamic distance learning. Even when our students are not physically in school, learning doesn't stop. Let's take a look around and see how a student class is structured to ensure they have quality opportunities to learn, both with a live teacher and on their own throughout the school day. Students access their learning opportunities through Google Classroom. The first thing they will want to check is their calendar or to-do list. This will quickly show them all the assignments they have coming up. Next, they simply select one of their classes and get started with their content for the day. The first thing students see when they enter their digital classroom is the stream. The stream will contain important announcements from the teacher and tell them exactly what they need to know to get started each day. You can see this student has a video announcement from their teacher.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to kindergarten.
By clicking on the Classwork tab, students can find their work for the day. You can see this student has 4 assignments to complete for English language arts. By clicking on the assignment, it will take them automatically to the task.
We're going to begin with phonics, and our goal is to be able to identify rhyming words. Now, if we look here.
In this assignment, students can watch a video of their teacher providing new content and modeling the skills for the day. Also, teachers can assign resources directly from our curriculum programs. Wonders, StudySync, GoMath, Big Ideas, Pearson Elevate, Studies Weekly, and Discovery Ed, in addition to SmartyAns and Achieve 3000. Additionally, teachers can create their own assignments using any of the Google tools. Once they finish an assignment, they use the Turn It In button to send it off to their teacher for some feedback. Google Classroom makes it easy for students to review their past work and see or hear comments from their teachers. By clicking View My Work, students can see the assignments they have turned in and review the feedback the teacher provided.
Great job, Esme. You found every single letter M.
This is also a great place for parents to quickly see their work and note if their child is missing any assignments that might need some attention. From the Classwork tab, students can also click on their calendar. Here, they can again see any assignment due dates. They will also be scheduled into live lessons with their teachers and peers. If they are ever unsure of when their live meetings with the teacher are, they can see them here in the calendar. We can see this student is scheduled into a learning group today at 11 o'clock. To access the meeting, they just click on the link.
And how do you know? Do you know which one's
If a student can't make the live session, they will be able to view the recording on their own time. Switching to a primarily digital environment for learning is sure to come with some unknowns. To ease the transition, we've added helpful videos to students' Google Classrooms to troubleshoot some of the common issues that pop up. Students will spend time with their teacher directly learning these skills at the beginning of the year, but the help videos will remain in their classrooms for reference in case they ever need to revisit. Additionally, each day, teachers will have office hours posted for their students and families. During this time, students and parents can simply click on the Google Meet link to connect with their teacher live. Teachers can also invite specific students to their office hours if they'd like to be sure the student gets some extra support. We'll also be using Remind for communication, so if a family schedule doesn't allow them to connect with the teacher during posted office hours, they can always reach out via Remind for a quick response or to schedule a time for a face-to-face meeting. We all want our students back in our classrooms as soon as it is safe. Until that time, we're feeling confident that the opportunities students have to learn both with a live teacher and on their own using our curriculum programs will keep them learning and on track. We are very excited for all the things the 2020-2021 school year will bring.
We hope you enjoyed both of these videos, as we all recognize how challenging the opening of this school year has been, but how many incredible things are happening in our school district as we continue to engage families, students, and staff in the student learning process. The Littleton School District has developed a Parent Help Center website as a resource for our families to provide support during distance learning. You can learn more about Google Classroom, the tools we use for online classes, as well as digital curriculum resources. There is also a button at the bottom of the page for parents to submit requests for help. Parents can learn more by visiting our district webpage and clicking on the Littleton Parents Help Center. Teachers and administrators have been doing an exceptional job sending remind messages to our families, answering emails, and responding to phone calls to support engagement during the first 2 weeks of school. We appreciate our teachers and our leaders. We want to thank the Educational Services Department, USERA Millenbaugh, ELA Instructional Coach, and our IT and PR department for putting together these informative and engaging videos. I want to also recognize leaders in our organization for collaboratively working on and submitting the application to the State Board of Education for our school district to have an online school and for being awarded this opportunity. This will allow for our school district, when time allows, for families to register their children to learn 100% in an online Littleton School District capacity. We look forward to continuing to engage all families in their children's educational experience during the current dynamic distance model. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was impressed with all that the presentation is there. Any of the rest of you had any comments or anything? I'm not, we'll pass on to item number 12.
I
Dr.
have
Freeman.
questions, Kurt, but I think the best way for me to get my, because I have several just based on that presentation. Dr. Freeman, would you just like me to put them in question format and send them to you?
Yeah, Ms. Reyes, I think, you know, you're in a unique position, both as a board member and a grandma, to give us feedback. And so we're gonna try to systematically collect feedback from people, but we welcome it all the time. And if there, you know, questions that would be good for the good of the order for all the board members, we can put both the questions and the answers in the weekly update, so everybody has them. And we're learning as we go too. So, you know, everything we hear actually is helpful in figuring how much to do, how fast, and whether or not we're connecting very well. So we need a lot of feedback early on to help get that right.
And just
And
one question I think is worthy of taking time. Just how many schools use Google Classroom or use this format, this curriculum? How many use this?
we did, I'm sorry, I got something backed up here. We did a survey through one of our professional groups called the Greater Phoenix Education Management Consortium. And it actually started out of the Phoenix Union system, but now it's expanded to over 40 school districts. And I'd say that more than half, maybe as many as 2/3, are using the Google Classroom platform to deliver. There's some people using a Florida program and some other people using a program called Lincoln to deliver content, but those are definitely a minority. And then some of the unified school districts like Mesa, TUSD, I think maybe Paradise Valley, I'm not sure about Peoria, have been developing their own online programs starting in high school and then working down in grades. A lot of those that are approved are like 6-8 programs. So they may be expanding, but they have a set of different platforms that are designed by course. And most of those originally were developed for credit recovery for high school kids. And then they've been modified moving down. There weren't a whole lot of people who had online delivery systems in the early primary grades because of the age and development of kids. So that's pretty new for everybody now because of the situation we're in.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. If any of you, the rest of you had any questions, go ahead and send those to Ada or Dr. Freeman, and we'll get those answered, as he said, in the next update. So with that, let's move on to item number 12. Dr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have been working with council, as all the school districts have, and I'm sure some members are aware from attending the school board's law conference. There is an association of lawyers that work on school issues and share information back and forth amongst themselves. And so the principal education people at Gust Rosenfeld and Udall Shumway, a couple other firms, put together a series of resolutions for school districts to use, so we weren't all going out and duplicating that effort in attorney's fees. And these are to deal with the governor's executive orders, the most recent of which is Executive Order 2020-51. But there are 2 other executive orders as well. And what they have done is built on top of one another. And so these are on advice attorney resolution for the governing board to help manage meeting the requirements in those executive orders. And so for the benefit of the board and the audience, I'll just go through them quickly. Whereas the Littleton School District is making an effort pursuant to the orders of the governor and the superintendent of public instruction, subsequent orders and legislation, and orders for school closure back in March, executive orders. There's a whole list of them here. So you have 2020-33, 2020-24, 2020-36, 2020-41, 2020-44, all leading up to where we are now to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus and to assure the health of students and teachers, prioritizing kids. I'm starting here now in the middle of whereas 2051 outlined the governor's plan for reopening schools. And whereas the governing board wishes to resume educational activities and business operations for the 21 fiscal year in a manner it's consistent with existing executive orders, but recognizing many unknowns about future conditions, the district's ability to conduct its educational mission and other activities that current orders may be superseding or modified future executive orders, federal or state laws. So now, therefore, be it resolved by the governing board that the board hereby directs and or authorizes the superintendent and delegates to take the following actions in compliance with Executive Order 2020-51 and those provisions of 2020-41 and 44, authorizing the superintendent to execute further documentation to effectuate resolution, including not limited to requisite documentation required by the Department of Ed or legal authorities jurisdiction of the district. We have a number of reports we have to complete to be eligible for COVID and grant funds and things like that. The governing board authorized the superintendent to work with relevant government authorities to comply with those laws and guidelines to prevent the spread of the virus, resume its operation and activities. Superintendent may implement regulations, protocols, support such compliance in conformity with Order 1 of 2020-51. Provide the governing board with a recommendation as to when in-person teacher-led classroom instruction can safely be made available. We've already agreed that we would do that at a governing board meeting. Provide the governing board with a mitigation plan for consideration approval prior to opening the school building for on-site support services. We've already agreed we'd do that at a governing board meeting. 4, in conformity with Order 3, Executive Order 2020-51, arrange for free on-site learning opportunities and support services to take place beginning August 17th. That's in an item coming up soon. Develop procedures to ensure social distancing, other mitigation strategies are implemented for on-site programs. Authorize the superintendent to apply for a waiver requirement to provide free on-site services if the county health department, in conjunction with the Arizona Department of Health Services, advises the districts, our district, that our COVID outbreak is significant enough to qualify for a waiver. Number 5, conformity with Order 5 of Executive Order 2020-51, develop and implement a policy relating to face coverings and revise the same as needed to comport with new guidance or requirements from ADHS, Centers for Disease Control. We think we can do that with a regulation because we need to be consistent with superseding jurisdictions in the requirement of masks. In conformity with Order 6, Executive Order 2020-51, governing board has determined it will pay employees that are in positions that are essential or hard to fill during periods of school building closures based on data and information provided by the superintendent and other sources that affirm such payments are necessary to preserve properly trained, qualified staff, serve the public purpose of protecting district's investment in workforce, and are feasible because the district has sufficient revenues to continue those payments. And to be eligible, district employees must report to work during the employee's normal work hours during periods of closures, whether the work is typical or alternative work assignment for which the employee is qualified to perform. And that's important. We are keeping everybody busy who's on the payroll right now. The district's number 7, the district's regular practices, protocols, and procedures is set forth governing board policies, administrative regulations, board adopted employee agreements, or otherwise may not be reasonable, feasible, or advisable to implement during COVID-19 outbreak, and therefore the governing board authorizes superintendent to temporarily suspend compliance with implementation of the same as needed to comply with applicable laws, regulations, orders, and guidelines, and or to promote the health, safety, and welfare of the school community, and or efficiently and effectively operate school district programs and services during COVID-19 pandemic. Should the superintendent exercise the discretion authorized by this section, the superintendent shall provide the board with prompt notice of actions taken. And number 8, to the extent that any provision in the resolution conflicts or is superseded by enacted federal or state legislation or local ordinance, the district shall comply with those laws or ordinances. This resolution has adopted properly noticed at a meeting of the governing board in 11 August And if the board approves this, to be signed by the president on behalf of the governing board after the meeting, you have a copy of that resolution attached, and we recommend the board approves. I can try to answer questions if board members have them, but as you can tell by the wording, I didn't write this.
All right, any of the members of the board there have a question that they would like to direct towards Dr. Freeman? If there is not, I have a motion to accept this.
This is Mr. Rader. I'll move the governing board approve the resolution as presented and to authorize the superintendent to take additional actions as necessary, including extending the dates of closure.
Carlotta seconds.
Thank you for that. Ada, can you take a roll call, please?
Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Sosnick.
Aye.
Thank you so very much. Passes. Well, you're on a roll, Dr. Freeman. Would you like to address number 13, on-site support services?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the governing board. So on-site support services was ordered by the governor in, I think, the two most recent executive orders. And we have, I'm looking over my notes. Did I make sure I didn't skip anything here? And so we have, by that order, to open that program on the 17th, which is the coming Monday. We also have, as part of this item, a proposal for phased reopening of some programs. And that reopening is contingent on metrics. So I'd also like to address the DHS metrics before we move forward with the other parts of this item. So the board has an understanding of how all of these are going to fit together. I updated some of this information for the board in their weekly update last week. So what I can do is quickly cover just by highlights here that are in bold. There's three components of the metrics: the positivity rate, and that's expected to be below 5% if we reopen for traditional instruction 5 days a week. There is a moderate level, which is between 5 and 10. And so this is a lot what you've been hearing in the local media. If we're under 7% positive, we can do hybrid learning. Hybrid learning is our model B, where part of the day or part of the week students attend school and part of the week they attend distance learning. And the idea being with that is it improves our social distancing. If we have half the number of kids at school, they can be twice as far apart. And if it goes over 10% positive, which it is today, you're in entirely distance learning, which is our model C. So we have worked to develop on-site support services, and the rationale of the governor has been that there are students who don't have access to the internet or otherwise someplace safe to stay during the day to access distance learning. And he has ordered the schools to do their best to try to provide that. And the funding for enrollment stabilization, the COVID funding from the federal government passed through the governor's office to our school district is contingent on us providing this service. So if we fail to provide on-site support services, our budget may not be made whole by the grant funds. Right now at a 12% reduction in enrollment from last year. That's anywhere an estimate between $2.5 and $4 million that would be in play if we don't do on-site support services. So we're assuming this is a thing that we need to do as best we can to support our families, but still keep everybody safe when we bring them back to school for that support. We have already released enrollment information to the community, and our plan is to do a weekly application process. Parents need to fill out an enrollment form that has complete directory information. They're supposed to give us information on if they are a priority group. So priority groups would include things like no internet access, family of a first responder. There's a list of those. That information is now all available on our website, and we already have almost 100 parents who've put in enrollment requests. So what we plan to do is have these starting in 3 facilities housed in our cafeterias. And I believe the 3 sites that we'll start out with next week are going to be Country Place, Tres Rios, and Estrella Vista. We're trying to place families based on first, second, and third requests. This allows us to have 3 different start times, just like our school year. The length of service has to match the hours posted last year for school. So it is one of the requirements. And we're going to do temperature checks on the kids, have them sign COVID waivers. A bunch of components like that are in place. And right now, HR is working on staffing for those rooms. And then what we would expect is that the number of parents requesting this service will go up week by week in the weeks ahead. And as long as we can provide staff, we'll try to accommodate those parents. When we run out of the ability to supervise more kids, we'll just have to put people on a wait list and see what we can do to arrange staffing. And so that is part of, I think it was Executive Order 2020-44 and 51. We begin work on that. Well, we've been working on it now. We begin implementation on Monday. The challenge with that is the state and the county still have not met the criteria for either Model A or Model B. We're not to 7% or 5% yet. And if we could pull up the attachment on the metrics, that ADHS. This is, I don't know, is this big enough? Thank you. For members to read, but let me just familiarize you with the dashboard screen that you're looking at. So you can see on the top is some text to familiarize people who aren't familiar with using the dashboard. And then on the left, you can see a graphic of the state of Arizona divided into the 15 counties. Is everybody following me so far on the page? The way this works when this is actually online, if you move your cursor over one of those counties, you will see the county data. So right now, what we're looking at is statewide data. And the 3 criteria are the 3 long horizontal graphs stacked on top of each other. So those criteria are based on data that was released August 6th. The next release of data will be August 13th. So each Thursday, they're going to release new data. And anybody, including school board members and school administrators, can go to the Department of Health Services website, click on their COVID information and school metrics, open up this page, and then if you move your cursor over Maricopa County, the data for Maricopa County will come up. The county health department is going to try to work on zeroing in more on zip code by zip code data, but that's not ready yet. So county by county data is. Now, if you look at the 3 metrics, what you see is as you move from left to right, the increase in COVID cases and the increase in positivity. And then what you see is a slow decrease on the other end of the curve where Arizona's numbers have been trending down and getting better. It's a little hard to see in the middle graph. There's I don't know if we can get more contrast or if we can zoom in just one more time. You can see where the line starts out green and then kind of turns gray and then turns red. And what happens is there's a gray line going across there, which is the 7% mark. And so the green part is where it was below 7. And then when it goes over 7, it turns red. Does that make sense to everybody? Right now, the last 2 weeks of data included in this data set are above 7%. So you have a red dot at 12.5 and another red dot at 15.8. So those are the 2 last data points. You can see well above 7%. And you need to get 2 green dots in a row to meet this criteria. So it has to continue to come down quite a bit before the second criteria could be met. If you look way back on the left, you'll see on these 3 graphs in the top left corner, a green check mark, a red X, and a red X. And what that indicating is the first criteria has been met, the second criteria has not, and the third criteria has not. So right now, Maricopa County has only met 1 of the 3 criteria. If you look at the bottom graph, I don't know if we can zoom in anymore because it's kind of a light version. You can see where there's a line that goes across there and it starts out green. And then you can see when it crosses that threshold that it turns red again. Now it has 2 data points for the 2 prior weeks, one at 11.3 and the other at 7.9. So when that drops below, when both of those drop below 10%, is that 10%? Yes. When both of those drop below 10% and you have 2 green dots, you will have met that metric threshold. So we're 1 green dot away from the 3rd criteria and 2 green dots away from the 2nd criteria. And that's just to get to Model B. You have to get below 5% to get to Model A. And that will be updated weekly. One of the things that the health department wants us to be aware of is the data that they're releasing this Thursday is for July 19th to August 1st. So I think everybody's noticed when they watch the news that the data goes up and down and up and down. And then what they try to do is a 7-year average to flatten it out, because there's a difference in the reporting time for different counties, depending on the facilities they have and how long it takes to get their data in. So the most accurate data is the data that's in arrears. By the time everybody catches up to the same data point, takes them a week or 2. So when we get data released on this Thursday, the 13th, it will be from August 1st and before. So as this is coming down, there is some ability for us to kind of anticipate the trend if the trend line's consistent. If these start to go up again, then that would be indication that it'll be even longer. And this is why you're seeing a lot of school districts and governing boards saying it looks like second quarter before we get all of these dots green and data low enough to be able to bring kids back to school full time. If you just extend those trends out, especially the second one on the percent positivity, you can see why governing boards and districts around the state are starting to think that we may not get those data points down to the metrics that are expected by Labor Day, which is, you know, a little less than a month away. So that's how that data works. We'll keep the board updated, you know, taking snapshots of this and putting in your weekly update. But you can also go and look this up, and anybody in the community can go look this up at any time they want. Now, having said that, we're going to make a recommendation for a small but significant phase in of some on-site programs, and that's because it is so challenging to implement those with distance learning. And that is for some of our preschool special needs students and some of our self-contained special needs students. A lot of these kids have adaptive technology and equipment and things like that that are difficult for parents to be able to have at home. Some of the strategies are difficult for them. So what we've done is we've asked teachers and staff who might be willing to work with those kids in these settings, because they're going to be very small and self-contained. They'll be really like their own pod and not exposed, at least in the school setting, to a lot of risk of exposure. Now, people are always at risk, you know, at home, to and from the store, and on the weekends. So we're not in control of everything everyone does. But this is being offered to parents as an option. So we're not telling them either come to school or get no program. Currently, we're doing our best to try to remotely service the needs of these kids and finding it very challenging. So what we want to do with the board's approval, these kids have their own busing, they have their own rooms, and right now, since nobody else in the student body is on campus, they'd be completely isolated from the rest of the student body. However, there are some kids who are medically fragile and maybe have autoimmune deficiencies, and those families may not want to take advantage of this opportunity and continue with distance learning out of concern for the safety of their children. So if we can open the special populations attachment. What you can see is a little bit of the introduction here is the a little bit of the rationale, which is including a free appropriate public education that may require some face-to-face or on-site services. And we're looking at eligibility of just 80 students out of 6,000 who might qualify for this. And again, it's going to be the parent's option. We'll still continue to provide distance services if that's what the family wants. Teachers who we surveyed, about half of them would be willing to come in and provide service on a limited basis with safety precautions. And so since this is not our entire program, we believe we can staff it. Our proposal is to begin this process on the 24th. So the focus of implementation of the district next week is going to be on-site support and getting that program up and off the ground. The week after that, and there's no buses for on-site support. This is parents dropping their kids off at the cafeteria when the program opens and picking them up at the cafeteria before the program closes. With special needs kids, where they're transportation eligible, we would provide that just like we would during the regular school year to help provide for the transportation to and from and the safety of those kids. So here we have a list of the programs that we're proposing we move forward to. One is the preschool program. it would run AM or PM sections 4 days a week, 2 hours a day, 8 students. And we think we can accommodate 112 slots for SPED and some model students, which are usually important to the IEP goals of those special need kids. If we can scroll to the next page and see the next program block. We have multiple disabilities, severe and profound classroom at Quinton. Same thing, what you'll see is all of these are 4 days a week. Some of the length of session is a little different depending on what we're trying to accomplish in each of these classrooms. We have a program called CASA at Littleton. It's a self-contained program. Again, 4 days a week. It has AM and PM sessions. It has groups that are grouped by age, and they'd be very small. You can see 4 and 6 kids in a group. We have a cross-categorical program at Littleton. And what that means is when we look at the challenges that some students have, we put them in a category that creates an enrollment and funding weight to help support the program. And in this setting, you may have kids in more than one category, but they have similar goals in their IEPs, so they can be put together 4 days a week, 2.5 AM PM sessions, and again, small groups with some accommodation and virtual instruction. The classroom staffing for these would be standard, and that's always been small groups with paraprofessional support because the needs of the kids are usually so extraordinary. We have to have small class ratios. Those are the only programs right now that we are recommending to the board to bring back on the 24th. And what we're worried about, as you saw the metric data from the state, is that it could be quite some time before we meet those metrics. And if these kids are in distance learning for another month or two, it could be tough for us to keep up some continuity of progress in their IEP goals. And so our hearts go out to them and their families. It's an extra effort on the board's part. It's after the 17th, which was the governor's deadline. It would be before metrics are met. So parents would need to sign a waiver to participate. But it is at the discretion of the school district and the governing board if we want to do a program like that. We're not recommending any other grade levels or any other programs at this time. But depending on discussion of the board and feedback, we might bring further recommendations at the regular September meeting, depending on what the data looks like on COVID spread and the metrics and those kind of things. So I don't want to look in the crystal ball too far ahead, but just to focus on that this evening. So we have a motion prepared for the board if they want to start with this recommendation. We reviewed the metrics. Support services aren't really discretionary. So the last thing we have is then the phase in and the support information. I'll try to answer questions as best I can. I may need to refer some of them to our Ed Services staff. I think Mrs. Kelly is probably on the Zoom, who's been working a lot with Ms. Kaufman and the staff in putting this proposal together. So turn it back to you, Mr. President, to see if there's some discussion or a motion.
Thank you very much. Any questions or discussion we'd like to direct toward Dr. Freeman or any one of the other ones that have been working on this?
I have some. This is Kathy.
Please, Kathy, go ahead.
So I don't know if I'm just confused, so I'm just going to try to make it simple. Are we talking on-site support and then a support for special needs? Are they two separate things, or we're talking about on-site support for autoimmune compromised children, special needs, whatever that may look like? Is that what we're proposing? I got confused because it sounded like we were proposing two things.
Mr. President, Mrs. Reyes, so it is kind of confusing and a lot's been happening very fast. The on-site support is by order of the governor. And so, we might say that we don't want to provide that support for our families, but it would have a significant fiscal impact, and we'd probably have to lay off staff if we did that. So we wanted to make you aware of the executive order that's charged us with doing that, and that we were starting that program on the 17th. It is completely different and a different set of kids from what would be the preschool and the special ed self-contained programs. So we would expect that parents wouldn't bring kids to that program either if they had some kind of health vulnerability, compromising situation. I don't think either of those programs would be good for those kids, but they are. So the first on-site is for children of first responders who need to be at work or where they don't have connectivity. The second program, and we don't need board approval for that because we have an executive order. The one I do want board approval for is if we're going to bring preschool and self-contained special needs kids and provide them an opportunity for in-school services as a completely separate group listed separately in the motion.
Okay, so I'm clear. So I still have a few questions. So on the on-site support, that is the governor's order. I get that. That has to be done. But does the governor's order, and if you said it, I was trying to follow it. On-site support, I think you're going to find that far more popular than you think perhaps you will. I think children, from what I've heard from parents, and I certainly haven't heard from them all, they want this. They want to have their, so on-site support means what? They would go in smaller groups into a cafeteria setting, and there would be someone there to kind of help them maneuver through the online learning? Or are they going to a classroom?
Mr. President, Ms. Reyes, those are great questions. So what the governor did is require us to host students, even though the metrics say we shouldn't be bringing kids back, with no additional resources to do that, except the resources we already have, which are staff who can be tasked to that. And in order to keep the federal GEAR grant funds, so what we have to do is rearrange existing staff to supervise those kids who would be dropped off. And like you said, they don't expect, for instance, high school participation to be that great, especially the kids that are older that can be independent. But we do expect a big run on this in lower grade age kids whose parents are looking for some relief. And so about the time 5,000 of them want to sign their kid up, we would be doing the same thing as in-school instruction, right? It would be everybody. So that's not possible. Right now, the teachers are in their classrooms or in their homes delivering distance learning. They're not available to go support anybody else who shows up on the site. A lot of our paraprofessionals and other people are tasked to things. We have bus drivers helping with IT requests from parents who are IT savvy. When we go to do preschool and special ed, some of those bus drivers are going to be driving kids. So the way we're going to estimate the availability of that program is going to be our ability to supervise those kids. We plan to bring them in at tables where they sit on their own table, separated by 6 feet, provide them the ability to charge their computers. They need to bring their own materials for the day, books, binders, paper, whatever they may need to keep themselves occupied. There is no instruction or support offered other than if they're doing distance learning and they log into our internet, they can participate with their teacher in the kind of things you were doing at home as a grandma, they can do in the cafeteria. But otherwise, we're only supervising their safe conduct, providing an air-conditioned space, and they'll have access to our cafeteria for breakfast and lunch, those kind of things that we would normally be providing anyway. So, we're just going to make sure, they can ask to use the bathroom and other things like that, but it's an amenity-free zone that is supervised by adults to the capacity we can safely do that. And like I said, we're going to start out Monday with about 100 kids, and we expect there to be more interest, and eventually we'll run out of space and people to supervise.
So really, it's just we're providing them in a cafeteria to come in and sit down. It's structured like a daycare center, really, because if they're virtually learning, they still got their laptops. And if there's limited staff and, these kids normally are going to come in because they just don't get it. Or perhaps their parents don't understand how to do it. So these kids come in really needing structure. They come in trying to understand different things. If I understand you correctly, that's really not what it's for. It's for a safe learning place. They have access to an internet. They do have support services, but it's not a teacher. It's merely there to help you get on Google Classroom, move around to the reading program. And do I have an understanding?
Yes, Mr. President, Member Reyes, they really are kind of assigned to a table for the day. Okay. And we're going to make sure they don't get hurt, don't get in trouble. We're going to take their temperature when they come in. We're going to ask if they have medications that the parents, label that on a bag and make sure that, if they need Ritalin at noon, they get it. But there's not other support services. We probably will have principals, assistant principals, and deans in there helping making sure people get settled. And if there's questions or issues to deal with those. But it's not, a super extravagant service. And if the kids run out of things to do, they'll be, putting their heads down on their table and just relaxing till mom or dad gets there to pick them up.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for the clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions? If there is not, can I have a motion from the board?
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I do have one question. Dr. Freeman, how has our response been from our staff who are going to be asked to run the first program, the governor mandated one? Do we have enough staff willing to come in?
Mr. Nielsen, Member Sosnick, that is in the works right now. So the first thing we did is identify a core group of classified support staff who aren't already tasked to a key position. So for instance, we're saying bus drivers who are helping parents, moms and grandmas with IT issues are a priority right now. We might at some point down the road, if the number of support questions come in, be able to move some of those people over to the on-site support program. So the first thing that's happening probably tomorrow is from that pool of prospective supervisors is asking for volunteers to go in the first round to the first 3 sites. So what we think is you could do with a minimum of 2. We'd like to have 3, 4 would be better in case somebody's sick or some problem arises, somebody has to leave the room. So we're anticipating that perfect plans rarely go perfectly, and that if we have at least 4 people to a room, that provides some flexibility for staff to cover needs that aren't anticipated. So we're in the process of doing that right now. But it is one of the challenges. I mean, I think you've hit on something that's really important, is that just because the governor's ordered it doesn't mean that all of our staff want to go in and do it. And there's a variety of options for people who refuse an assignment. One of them is to take leave or to do some other things. Not everybody is in the same place, length of service and seniority wise. We're trying to find a place for everybody who works for us to contribute, be productive, and be safe. So I think at a certain point, where we think safety is a really concern, we'll have to put people on a wait list until, some kids drop out and make an opening, or we can reallocate staff to expand or form a new section. And we're just going to do it on a week by week and case by case basis, living within our means and resources and showing respect for our staff. But I think this is one of the things that people don't realize, regardless of your politics or your philosophical position on opening schools or not opening schools. If we put 36 kids in an on-site support room with 3 staff members and 3 people get sick and can't come, it makes a difference if those 3 people are kids or if those 3 people are grown-ups. If the 3 people are kids, then there's 33 kids in the room and still 3 adults. But if those 3 people are the classified staff supervising the room, there's no one to supervise the room. And that's a problem when you accept kids onto your campus and you accept responsibility for their safety. So there are a lot of variables at play. And one of them is, you know, we live in a state where attracting and retaining staff is a challenge, and adding an additional program in the middle of a pandemic is especially a challenge if you're already stressed for staffing. So I promise that, you know, we'll do our best to be creative and provide a service for our community and prioritize it appropriately. But we're also going to be sensitive to people's health and safety needs in how they're assigned. And so other than a case-by-case basis, I don't know how much more I can tell you. I hope I've answered that.
You answered my question, and I was really glad to hear. I know in other districts, they're asking special education paras to come in and help supervise, on top of those paras having other duties that they have to do virtually. And so I'm glad to hear that you're hoping to not have to do that, because that seems like a security problem for both, in that the person can't do both jobs.
Yeah, we would have to prioritize those assignments.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Any other questions that Dr. Freeman can address? If not, may I have a motion from the board?
This is John. I'll move the governing board approve August 24th as the start date for phased reopening with a modified Model A plan for preschool and self-contained special education.
Thank you, John.
And this is Amy, and I'll second.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. Ada, would you take a roll call?
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Yes.
Dr. Ramos,
I heard you. I'm sitting here with it.
Mrs. Reyes.
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes. Thank you. Mrs. Sashanek.
Aye.
Thank you.
Dr. Ramos,
Yes.
you have not cast yet. Is that correct?
Yes, I know. I'm teetering on wanting to explain my vote, but I'm just struggling a bit with having anyone come back until we can ensure there is, you know, the utmost safety. Acknowledging the issues that you've raised, I understand. It's, you know.
I think we understand completely and share your reservation, and that's part of the reason it's so important to us to make this a parent choice.
Aye. That's my vote. Aye, Ada.
Thank you so much. Dr. Freeman, if you got one more, you're running out of voice. Number 14, if you please.
My ears might be wearing out, but okay. So, Mr. President, members of the board, each year, the board has an opportunity to participate in the political agenda for the statewide organization. And they've rescheduled the county meetings. And I believe our county meeting has been moved back on the calendar for Maricopa. In the past, I think they've had more than one Maricopa meeting, but I think it's been moved to October 17. The format has also changed. And so I don't think that we need to do typically an adoption of priorities, but we do need to have a delegate. We need to, if you want to have a delegate, then we need to pick one. If the Littleton board wants to participate, Mr. Rader, I believe, was the delegate and went to the county meeting last year. So he may want to speak to that, or he may just want to nominate himself and keep doing it and not tell people what a great experience it was. So he can keep it all to himself another year. Mr. President, I'll turn the discussion over to you for figuring out how best to represent Littleton.
Thank you. John, I don't know if you want to say anything. I know that this year probably is not going to be in person. It's going to be virtual.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Freeman, and thank you, President Nielsen. Certainly a very interesting experience. It'll be, we'll see how it kind of translates to Zoom or whatever format they're going to be utilizing this year. I think really it's such a great experience that maybe somebody else wants to enjoy it this year. I know I was the alternate 2 years ago, and then the primary representative last year. So
Perletta will volunteer to do this if it's October 17th, right?
Perletta, thank you so very much. Oh, quick vote. Can somebody? I'll move the governing board authorize Perletta Ramos to act as the board delegate for ASBA Delegate Assembly to represent the views of the board and be that representative to the county meeting.
I'll second that. This is Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it. Ada, can you take a roll call there, please?
Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes,
Aye.
Mrs. Soshanek.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Appreciate
Thank
that,
you.
Perletta.
Congratulations.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. I think we have one more item here that we need to take care of. Mr. French, are you online here with us tonight?
I am here.
Maybe you want to introduce yourself just a little bit. This is the first time we've got to see your face, maybe.
You know, I do. I was going to put that in my presentation. It's the first time that we've got to virtually meet. It is a pleasure to be here with the Littleton family. I have learned just from my little over my month being here, I've learned so much from the executive team, from the director team. Just so much going on. I'm so pleased to be here. So I am excited to be in the long haul for this. So Sue, can you put my presentation up? Thank you. President Nielsen, Littleton governing board members, Dr. Freeman, Littleton community. This evening, we will be reviewing the 2020 bond and capital override expenditure report. We will review our current bond authorization as passed by the voters in the November 2017 election, as well as the voter approved capital overrides of November 2012 and 2018. You can go to the next slide for me. Arizona revised statute 15481Y and 15491K require updates on the district's bond and capital override. This update must include the progress of capital improvements funded by bonds and a capital override. This update must occur between September 1st and October 31st each year. As we are bringing this as information tonight, we will put this on the consent agenda during our September meeting to meet the statutory requirement. Littleton passed a bond election in 2017, which authorized the district to sell $22.7 million in bonds. This authorization is valid for 10 years. As of this presentation, the district has sold $8.7 million of the $22.7 million, leaving $14 million remaining authorization. As you can see in phase one, We sold May 2018, 3.75 million. Phase 2 was in April 2019 of 2 million. And phase 3 just recently in May 2020 of 2.95 million. Next slide for me, Stu. Thank you. This slide represents the expenditures from the 3 bond issuances. As you can see, just over $7 million has been spent on land purchases and related expenditures. $425,000 on a district energy savings contract, and just over $322,000 on school buses. This leaves the district just over $913,000 of remaining funds of the $8.7 million issued. We will be reviewing 2 capital overrides during this presentation since they overlapped in fiscal year 1920. Littleton went out for the initial capital override in November of 2012, which was the fiscal year 12-13, and began our annual authorization in fiscal year 2014. The annual authorization for the capital override for fiscal year 2014 through 19 was $1,950,629. Capital overrides are typically for 7 years. This capital override only ran for 6 years due to voter approval to renew in the 6th year. So in order for us to get total override authorization, we take the annual authorization and multiply it by the number of years for the override, which in this case was $11,703,774. We allocated the capital override into 4 sections: information and technology, educational resources, maintenance and operations, and transportation. You can see each section's budget under the total override budget and expenditures under expenditures through fiscal year 2020. Educational resources had remaining budget capacity of approximately $900,000 at the end of fiscal year 18-19. And they spent about $870,000 in fiscal year 20, all of which was covered by the remaining budget capacity. So those funds provided for the curriculum adoption that was approved in fiscal year 19-20, and the remaining budget of $39,539 will be used to purchase additional instructional aids to support the adopted curriculum. As a review of items purchased using the fiscal year 14 through fiscal year 19 capital override, transportation was able to purchase 5 new buses and install cameras on the entire fleet. Operations utilized the funds by resurfacing floors, resealing parking lots, replacing HVAC units, replacing carpet, and providing interior and exterior surface treatments. IT used the almost $5 million allocation to the department by purchasing computers, purchasing a district-wide phone system, server, point-to-point, and wireless upgrades, as well as refreshing technology in the classroom, such as projectors and audio equipment. Lastly, educational resources was able to purchase textbooks, instructional aids, and instructional software. Next slide. This brings us to the most recent capital override. As mentioned before, our most recent capital override is a November 2018 ballot measure, which was fiscal year 2019 for the school and became effective in fiscal year 2020. The voters authorized an annual dollar amount of $2,350,629 for 7 years, totaling $16,454,403. Next slide. This slide shows us the total budget by department, as well as the expenditures through fiscal year 20. The remaining budget for the remaining 6 years of the override. As mentioned before, educational resources was able to make purchases for all their needs from the fiscal year 14 through 19 capital override and did not have to use any funds from the new capital override in fiscal year 20. Here's a breakdown of items each department has slated for this capital override. The transportation has budgeted 10 buses and a small refresh to the district white fleet. Information and technology will be upgrading and refreshing computers and classroom displays and audio equipment, upgrading servers and then the district wireless system, and expanding the one-to-one program. Maintenance and operation will have additional campus flooring projects, purchase school furniture, have interior and exterior paint, playground equipment replacement, as well as maintenance and custodial equipment. Educational resources will purchase library books and digital library material, adopted textbooks, instructional aids, instructional software, assessment material, supplemental instructional aids, and software. And with that, I am happy to take any questions that you may have.
Questions from any of you? Mr. French, just on the previous slide, I'll just ask you one quick one there on the previous slide there. So that's remaining, the budget remaining, that goes from now to 2026. Is that what that is?
That is correct.
And if we have another override in that, then we'll just add on to that, whatever. Okay, thank you. Any others? If not, again, that's just informational. That's just informational. We don't have to take an action on that, but as Mr. French said, we will have that on the consent agenda for the September meeting. So if there's no comments, questions on that, thank you for your presentation, Brian. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Get used to seeing you face to face one of these days.
I'm looking forward to it.
If there's nothing else from any of the rest of you, can I have a motion to adjourn?
This is Amy, and I move that we adjourn at 8:25.
Thank you, Amy.
I'll second.
That's Perlette. Thank you. Ada, would you take a roll call, please?
Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
Mr. Rader,
Aye.
Dr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mrs. Reyes, Mrs. Reyes?
I don't think she's on the meet anymore.
Yeah. Mrs. Soshanek?
Aye.
Thank you.
She must have gone to sleep or something there, huh? The computer ran out. Thank you all so very much for being here this evening. Appreciate it. Have a good rest. Have a good rest of the week.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.